Goodness, it's so strange to see my name up there. Thank you for having me. I'm totally terrified right now. So forgive the paper because I've just been writing frantically for about a week. So welcome to our sex talk this morning. It seems oddly strange to talk about sex this early in the morning. It seems oddly strange for me even to be awake this early in the morning. As Brandon said, I work in theater. It's a nighttime activity generally, and it is before 10 o'clock. So, you know, my brain is 2 cups of coffee in, and so hopefully we'll get through this together. So, sex is a funny thing. I was thinking about this laying in bed last night where I'm just going to overshare a little bit off the top. I was laying in bed with this person I've just recently started dating, I guess, and I actually like burst into tears after sex, and I couldn't for the life of me figure out why. And I think part of it was like stress about this for sure, and other things that are happening in my life, new jobs and things, and I found myself apologizing for like weeping uncontrollably at 2 a.m. in bed. I was a little tipsy, but also I woke up this morning and then I took back my apology. Because if we can't feel the full range of whatever our emotions are as it comes to sex, then why are we doing it? You know, for my money anyway. And if we can't be with people that we can have an orgasm and then cry in front of, then I don't want to be with somebody who I can't do that in front of. And it just got me thinking as I woke up this morning and coming here to talk about sex, how messy and funny and complicated and ridiculous and awesome sex is. And I think we get, rightfully so, kind of hung up in the big questions about it. And I'm going to ask you guys some big questions about it this morning. But I think we also should always kind of go into these relationships going like, yeah, it is fun, right? It is fun to have sex with people if you like them. It's less fun sometimes to have sex with people if you don't like them. And you guys can ask me questions about that later if you want. So what I wrote down for my introduction, I didn't say because that is the thing that occurred to me this morning. So, who I am. Wait, pause on that. I want to make some notes. I want to get some caveats to this. When I say things like sexual identity, I just want to make a blanket statement that whoever you are, whoever you want to fuck, it's cool. I'm not here to tell you that there's any right way or any right person for you to be with. So please don't feel like I'm imposing anything on you. Okay, so second thing, me, and what gets me here. So it's my belief that as a society, as a group of people who come together and make a society, that we're pretty obsessed with what people are more than who people are. And we get a bit hung up sometimes on the what. And I think what is important, what gets us jobs, certainly. You know, when someone looks good on paper, I think that's really a what of who they are. It gets us friends sometimes, and even relationships, certainly. But I think as a sexual health educator and as an artist, it's really important to me to get to the who, which is the meat of human beings. And what are certainly clues into who those people are, but by no means a definitive statement. Your job is not who you are. Your partner is not who you are. There's so much more to that. So I'm a theater artist, a writer, sometimes a music journalist, and a sexual health educator. And as Brandon said, I work at the Traveling Tickle Trunk. If you've never been there, come on in, because it's rad. We are the only sex-positive sex store in Edmonton. We do workshops, we sell stuff, and we do home toy parties as well, which is how I started there. And one of the other things that I do there that has really started to be impactful to me as a sex educator is that I teach workshops in male sexual pleasure, legitimately known as penis-pleasing workshops, affectionately called blowjob school. And I just prefer to call it blowjob school because penis-pleasing workshops sounds way too clinical, and it's way more fun than that. But I hear a lot of really crazy stuff in those workshops from a lot of women who are really baffled by sex and about their partners who are equally baffled about sex. And your body knows how to do it, so you just gotta figure out how to talk to yourself and your partner about it. So that's kind of what gets me here in this room. The thing that kind of gets me thinking about sex a lot, when I was 9, I didn't have sex in high school. Nobody I went to high school with, none of my friends had sex. We did in the 90s. I don't think maybe people had sex in high school. Nobody I knew had sex in high school. And I lost my virginity when I was 19, and it was quite a traumatic experience. He's not here. Good. So we encounter each other at weird, like, business networking things now. And 2 strokes in, he announced that he was gay. Yeah. And I think maybe if you went to theater school, that could be an experience that you've had. But I didn't have sex for a long, long time after that, because it was like, I was like, oh God, I made him gay, and oh fuck, no one's gonna ever want to have sex with me again, and it was really a really awful experience. And then when I was 23, I had sex with somebody I didn't really like, and then just got super slutty, and I think that's been really good for me, because I've kind of gotten over a lot of the heartbreak of that first experience. And since I've started working at the Tickle Trunk, I've tried to figure out how to talk about myself as a sexual being, and how to define my sexuality, my sexual orientation, my sexual identity. And I never felt prior to that I could really own the word queer. But I've started to, because it occurs to me that I actually, and I think for a lot of like hetero-flexible people, it's easy to dismiss those early same-sex experiences as like childhood experimentation. But when I think about being 13 and 14 and having sex with women, really, it's hard for me to think about now. I didn't have a word for that when I was 23 or when I was 19. And now at 32, I think I can like feel almost good about using the word queer for myself. I think it's a really beautiful blanket term. So those are all of the things that bring me here today. And I want to just be very clear and say that none of this makes me an expert. I didn't go to school to study sexual health. I went to theater school. And but what it does give me, what all of this world has given me over the last 3 or 4 years, is a breadth of experience and a group of people of really interesting, wonderful people that I've met who've educated me so much about adult sexual health education and how much we still don't know about ourselves and about our partners. And so please, I'm not a doctor. I'm really bad at math. So this is just sort of comes from my own life experience. When I was asked to come here today, I was asked to talk about where the intersection of being a theater artist and a sex educator come together. And at first I was like, they don't? I don't know, because I can talk in public? I don't know. But then I started thinking, and a mentor of mine recently reminded me that no matter when we're working on a show, but I think this really applies to anything, no matter what we're doing, when you strip away sets, lights, costumes, and all the drama of the drama, all that's left, or all that should remain anyway, is, and if it doesn't, you have a problem, but is some search for some essential truth about ourselves, about humanity, and I think that search, that question, is where my two roles as artist and sex educator intersect. So whether the prop's a dildo, the set's a couch, or the backseat of a Subaru Forester, when you strip it all away, and I mean that pun, all that remains really should be essential questions about who we are, about the truths of ourselves as human beings. In directing, which is what I typically do, and dramaturgy, which is what I also typically do, I think it's really essential, and all the time, the only thing that we ever talk about is objective, which is like an annoying word that actors get really annoyed about being asked about. But it's a really simple concept, and it's about what you want. When you're on stage, what do you need from the other person in the scene with you? What are you, all of the words, all of the text that you're given are driving toward what you need from that other person. And I think, and then also following that, where does conflict arise where your objective and theirs meet? And how does that alter what you want from them or what they want from you? And I think sitting down to really think about this, I realized that that word, objective, is where these two worlds intersect. Because even though I don't call it that, objective is what we want from the world. And by narrowing down our objectives, we're able to narrow down those important truths about ourselves and then develop the language to talk to our partners about what they want. And I don't mean like what gets you off. I mean like, what do you want out of your life? Who do you want to be? And how can the people in your life help you be that? So we are at the mercy of those intersections. And I would argue that our sexual relationships exist before anyone's clothes ever come off, before lips ever touch or hands are ever held. Our sexual relationships begin with ourselves and are extended towards other people as desire propels us. In play or in reality, we have to look within ourselves and communicate what's important to us before we ever get naked. Now, this sounds so serious, and it's like, oh, but what if I just want to get drunk and pick somebody up at the bar, or I want to just like go on Tinder and have sex with everyone that crosses my path? Like, please go for it. Do it. Do whatever you want to do. But I would argue that at some point, even if you haven't had this conversation with somebody that you're going to have sex with, you've thought about your objectives, even if you've just thought about it with yourself. So if you're going to go to that bar that night, at some point you've felt in yourself that you're okay with what it means to have a one-night stand. And I don't mean like, baby, what does this mean? I mean like what it means in your larger worldview to go out and do those, to do whatever you want. But at some point, I think we all do ask ourselves those big questions about like, does this meet my goals and objectives for my life? And if you haven't, please do, because I think you'll find some stuff. And I think it also, those conversations that you have with yourself inform every relationship that you get into. Little r relationship, not like relationship and all those weighty connotations of that word. So the thing that makes doing theater and talking about objective really easily is that a playwright wrote down a play and told us how it ends. And our lives don't do that. We don't know how the story ends. However, each moment is a little narrative in and of itself. And so you know where one instance ends and the next one begins. And I think that that's something that we can remind ourselves of as well, is that everything, and this is like so, but everything is a beginning and an end. And I think we're well reminded of that if we are able to just internalize that and take it for what it's worth. Sometimes an ending is really valuable as well. So how this all relates to sex, because I want to offer you something today, a little bit of a shift of a paradigm, perhaps. Sex is not an act of penetration. It is not two people who decide that they are going to penetrate each other in some way. That's fucking. Sex is, wait, I wrote down a definition like that I thought of. Hang on. Sex is the act of physical or emotional intimacy between one or more consenting adults and defined by the people involved in that sexual equation. Sex is what you make it. If for you, kissing is sex, check. If for you, going to a movie with someone and expressing something very personal is sex for you, check. Fucking is penetration, is the act of inserting something into something else. That's not sex. Personally, I define sex when it becomes oral, but that's me, and everybody else has their own individual definitions. And I want to share two anecdotes that also sort of lead me to some questions that I want to ask you. So recently, and this kind of happens often actually at blowjob school, a female participant said to me, "Oh, my boyfriend can't have an orgasm from oral sex. Like, is something wrong with him?" And I said, "If you don't have an orgasm, is something wrong with you?" And she was like, "No." And I was like, "Well, then nothing's wrong with your male partner, because for every human being, there's a different way to get off." And then she said, "Oh, okay, maybe I'm just bad at it." And she took that my saying there's nothing wrong with him and taking that to mean that there's something wrong with her. And I said, the fact that you're here proves there's nothing wrong with you. And then recently I read, went around on Facebook. There was an article about, in the Walrus, about a sexual health education group in Calgary called Wise Guys. The S's are Z's. And I'll put it on Twitter or something, or my website. If you want to read it, I'll link to it if you want to track it down that way. And it's 3 men are taking on the rather brave and complicated task of providing sexual health education to teenage boys in schools in Calgary. Terrifying. And but what they're really trying to do, and I'm going to quote it here because I don't want to mess it up, because it was something that struck me as so beautiful and so essential to all of us, regardless of our age or our gender or our sexual orientation, is that Blake Spence, who's the founder of Wise Guys, says that he wants the boys to worry less about acting like men and think more about acting like themselves. And I think for me, the thing that I've been learning as I grow and as I experience more people and more experience, as I experience more experiences, as I experience more and more of my life, and I look back on my own sexual history, the thing that continues to strike me is that, like, I need to worry less. We all need to worry about less about being what somebody else, what an outmoded sexual health education in schools tells us about who we are, what our friends tell us about who we're supposed to be, what, I hate to say it, what the media tells us what we're supposed to be, what money tells us what we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to buy to be those things, that we just need to figure out how to be ourselves in a sexual context, and just as humans as well. And I think that we are generally baffled and often troubled by our own sexual identities and objectives. Notions of doing something right or wrong, sexual prowess, and comfort level are overblown by friends, the media, and the almighty dollar. And our sexual health system values sensationalism over a complex and nuanced discussion of individuality and identity. Nobody has taught us how to define our own objectives. And we can never psychically know what our partner brings to the table or the bedroom or the car, either. You have to ask them. Even after years of being with someone, new insights and fantasies can be revealed. And I just want to just like insert a little rant here. And this is like something that I often get a little ranty about at blowjob school. Sex is, we need to be more holistic in our approach to sexuality. Sex is not a goal. An orgasm is not the end of sex. We don't have to have an orgasm to have sex. You don't have to have an orgasm every time you have sex, regardless of your gender, of your genitals, of your sexual orientation. Sex is about pleasure, and it's about figuring out what our partner, what we like in conversation with ourselves and with other people. The journey is honestly not way better sometimes, but is at least as good as the whole 28 seconds of a really powerful orgasm. It's all super fun. And if we just erase from our minds the notion that in order to have a fulfilling and like good sex life, that you're good at sex, it's not about an orgasm. It's about how well you are meshing with the people that you're fucking, and how well you are communicating and enjoying each other, whatever that means. And sex can start like with a hand on a thigh in a movie, or with a look across a room, or I'm trying not to look at anyone when I say that, or with a notion of desire in yourself, to see somebody across the room and go like, yeah, that is the beginning of a potentially sexual relationship, and there's pleasure in that as well, even if it never gets to any sort of pants off situation. So that's my rant. It was less ranty than it sometimes is. Okay, so this is my call to action for all of you. How's my time? Yeah, great. And I'm going to read this too. So I want each and every one of you, not right now, at some point in your life, to look inside of yourself and consider your kinks and fetishes, your desires and fantasies. And consider perhaps a redefinition of sex for you, adding space for the inclusion of personal and complex details that make you and your experiences unique. Consider the journey rather than the goal, and pleasure beyond an orgasm. Consider if simply touching someone's hand in a way that provides you both pleasure might be sex. Think about how and whom you fuck, and if your relationship could be evolved to include an even broader experience of pleasure. Consider that at this moment is both the beginning and the end of a narrative. What will your objectives be moving forward? Will you change the way you kiss your lover when you get home? Will it change how you talk to your partner about what you want? Will you jump them in the car on your way to work this morning? Whatever you do, don't ever apologize for having an orgasm and crying in bed. Thank you. I'm so sweaty. Questions, please. I've heard everything. I swear to God, you can't shock me anymore. Yeah. Like my personal impact? I think Edmonton gets a little bit of a bad rap as like conservative, and I encounter so many wonderful people who just want to explore. And I think me, as an extension of the work of the Tickle Trunk and in the community, has a really positive impact on our city, because we offer a place and a collection of people whom you can walk into our store or at a sex toy party or in a workshop and know that it's a space for you to be fearless, and or to be able to say like, I'm so scared, you know, and so I think the store, and then I feel like myself as well, you know, I've had really wonderful connections with a lot of people, are providing a really necessary service to the city, and a space for people to express all of their desire and find a place where they can go like, hey, I need to buy this thing for this other thing that I like. How do I do that? Like, we could do that for you. And I think Edmonton is, I think Edmonton, like any city where there are human beings, is a sexual city. And we just need to find these little corners, these little pockets where we can talk about it in a way that doesn't come with shame and judgment. And I think the Tickle Trunk and the people who work there provide that opportunity. Hi. Okay. Right.
Whereas, like, you can teach people about, like, self-sex. Like, you know, young girls. I had friends having sex in grade 7.
Yeah.
And that was a long time ago. And the fact that, like, these older boys were coming and having sex with them, and they felt probably empowered by the fact that these boys liked them, but
Sure.
they weren't empowered because they're 12.
Yeah. She was just asking about how groups like Wise Guys can come to exist when we have a very rigorous sexual health curriculum in our schools. Our curriculum, our sexual health curriculum, is dictated by the Alberta government, by the education system. Regardless of the religious affiliation of the school, there are certain things that that are part of the curriculum. It's an abstinence-based policy. If you have sex, you will get pregnant and you will get an STD, and that is the end of it. So don't do it. And also, condoms. And where religious affiliation comes in is that parents are allowed to opt their children out. I think that within Edmonton Public, there's like a section of like evangelical Christian schools, and I think they've somehow managed to opt out a little bit. But there's still reproductive health. We still learn how babies are made. And that's by no means an effective. So Wise Guys have managed to create a framework where they teach workshops in schools that will have them. In Edmonton, the Elizabeth Fry Society goes into schools and teaches something called female empowerment to junior high school girls. And it's not sexual health education, but it is sexual health education because it's about body ownership and it's about kindness towards other women. And it's about learning how to ask for what you want and also to say no. Because you're right, like when an older boy comes to you and wants to have sex with you, you feel empowered, but you are in fact the opposite of empowered. And so what Elizabeth Fry Society is attempting to do is to empower young girls through their relationship with other young girls so they have those tools to say no. So it is and isn't sexual health education. The owner of the Traveling Tickle Trunk, Brenda Kerber, is working exceptionally hard to at least allow for a more positive sexual health education, even at teachers' convention, because the only people who are there are the pro-life organizations. But they pay their money, so we're kind of working as a store to get a bit of a change to sexual health education for young people, because I know when I was in school, it was like, here's how babies are made, don't do that. So, and then you do it anyway. So. I think it must, I know for me, it was really terrifying. We spent a lot of time being taught in school, but also from our friends, what is right and wrong. And I think by the time you get to a workshop, you've sort of, you're sort of on your path to maybe making a change, But I meet with a lot of like people get there and they pay their money and then they're openly hostile. Like for a lot of people, the response to discomfort is hostility. And I get challenged, like people like, what do you know? Why are you an expert? Did you go to school? Like isn't actually blowjob school. I can't actually go to school to learn. But but I get really, and at sex toy parties as well, like I get a lot of, and it happens more at sex toy parties because that is a lot about self-pleasure. And I get a lot of like, you can't do that. That's bad. You can't, no. But they're there. And usually in those cases, that's where I meet more of the resistance and more of the fear because they got invited to something by a friend. And so they're in this room with some people they know and some strangers, and suddenly another stranger is coming and being like, here's this awesome dildo, and here's how you use it, and here, I'm going to pass it around. And people get really freaked out. And 90% of the time, that terror manifests in hostility toward me. Because I'm the one that you can be mad at, because I'm challenging you in some way. And I've actually, I don't do this very often, but I've actually just had to say, you could go. Like, you don't have to be here. Do you want to go? Because you're ruining this for everyone. And I've only had to do that a couple of times, and I never like it. Because I'm cutting somebody off at the knees before they've had a chance to go, oh, maybe I would like that. But that is a very rare occurrence. And 95% of the time, those openly hostile people come into the room with me after the party. We do private shopping, so people are able to come in quietly and ask me questions. And even if they never buy anything, they're like, hi, I was just really curious about anal sex, or something to that effect that they have never said those words out loud before. And so I guess that goes back to your question of impact as well. It you can spin hostility a little bit, but I think by the time they get to the store or to blowjob school, they're on their path. It's at homes where people want to punch me sometimes, I think. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, sure, yeah. He just asked about materials that sex toys are made out of. So our industry, the sex toy industry, is in no way regulated. So I know, it's like terrifying, actually. And so lots of sex toys are made with things like jelly rubber and weird plastic compounds that off-gas and leach phthalates and BPAs into your body. And there's absolutely, there's lots wrong with it, but according to like the government and trade relations and all of those things, nothing wrong with that, because they're sold as novelty items. So we're very careful in our store to make sure that we know every single ingredient in that product. 90% of what we sell is silicone, which is totally body safe, and used to like make hip replacements and things. So we're very careful about what we sell, and we're very aware of what's in things. And if the person, I always just say to people like, if you're into that style of toy, we don't have it, but ask the person at the Love Boutique what it's made out of. And if they can't answer you, don't buy it. Typically things that glow in the dark are not that body safe. So if I'm a big fan of glass. It's totally sterilizable. It retains heat and cold, and actually, oddly, feels the most natural. I saw one more question. Can I take one more question? Okay. Somebody, Selena.
So if you were disappointed by our government this week with the GSA motion,
Mm-hmm.
what kind of advice would you give each of us as Edmontonians to in a way, contribute to a GSA in our own life interaction?
Right. Well, I think like if you have children, take on their sexual health education on your own absent them from the school ones and start early when they're like wee and discovering their genitals. And then because sexual health education is a provincial matter, I would write to your MLA, talk to your MLA. The Tickle Trunk, I'll also post this on my website because I don't think it's on their website, but on their Facebook page is a survey that you can also take and is being compiled and being sent to our legislators about education. So, and I just say, honestly, like, research, find alternative sources for sexual health education, even as an adult. Be cautious about your doctor, because often they just want you in and out. And start early with your kids if you have them.